Alright boys, I'm back, and this time we are doing something completely original and different. This time, we are not focusing on the WWE, but we are going to the redheaded stepchild TNA, and we are looking at
TNA Wrestling presents the most dangerous event of the year, Lockdown.
And just to let you know, 2013 was 12 years ago. GTA 5 originally released in 2013. The PS4 came out in 2013. And Man of Steel hit theaters in 2013. So let's get into it. The announced team for today is Taz, Todd Kennelly, and Mike Tenay. Mike Tenay has to be one of the best commentators in wrestling. Now, let me tell you about a little bit backstory of what the story is or what is happening in the company right now. TNA right now is going through its Aces and Eights storyline. While it might not be the best storyline that TNA has ever done, it is the most mainstream one. It is the one that everybody knows. Everybody knows about Aces and Eights if you're a casual fan of TNA, if you're a hardcore fan of TNA, or if you never watched TNA, you know what the Aces and Eights is, and you know where they came from. So we are in a important time of the company right now, because after the storyline of the Aces and Eights, everything for TNA started going downhill. Now, it was a gradual downfall at this time. After this storyline, everything just went to shit for TNA. They had that awful Magnus title reign. They lost their top stars. They lost their TV deal. And I'll go into more detail about this storyline and what happened with it and what effects it had with the company when we get to the main event. But let's get into the first match of the night. It is an X Division title match between Zema Ion, Christian York,
Who?
and Kenny King, the champion. Tagline for the X Division was, "It's not about weight limits, it's about no limits." And unfortunately, this match had a lot of limits. This match for an X Division match was very slow. It was very methodical and it was very boring in the ring. There were a few good spots. I don't want to take everything away from them, but those spots were way too few. First big spot I want to bring up is a botch that Kenny King had on the outside of the ring. So Zema Ion and Kenny King are standing in the ropes, and Zema Ion is between the two ropes, and York is outside standing by the barrier. So Kenny King was supposed to jump on Zema Ion's back, flip, and land on York, but his feet slipped and he had a pretty bad landing. He fell on the barrier. You can see that he missed York, but Zema Ion saves the day. He goes onto the top rope and he does a beautiful top rope move to the outside that hits both guys. After that exchange, they move back into the ring. Nothing of note. They have a few wrestling moves, a few punches, a few kicks, spins, and all that. The match was forgettable, unfortunately. And especially for an X Division match, it was slow. The next best spot in the match was when Zema Ion gave both of the guys a DDT. Again, that was the last notable spot in the match, and the match itself was way too long. For an X Division match, you expect one thing and one thing only. You expect fast-paced action, you expect people to be jumping off the rope, jumping into the crowd, or jumping out of the ring 24/7. Basically what AEW is, but before AEW, X Division guys were supposed to do that. They were supposed to come out in the beginning of the shows and get the crowd hyped up for what they were about to see. But again, this match didn't really do that. Kenny King does pick up the win and he remains as champion. And the reason I believe that this match didn't stand out or it didn't fire up the crowd as much as it should have, it was because of the people that were in this match. Now, Zema Ion is a decent wrestler. He's been in TNA at this time for a really long time, and in his future, he will be the DJ for the Bromance. He's nothing special, but he gets the job done. Same thing with Kenny King. He's been in TNA in and out. He leaves, he comes back. He's more of a Ring of Honor guy. And while he is decent, both him and Zema Ion are nothing special, so they can't really kick a match into that next level. Now, Christian York is a whole different story. If you guys don't remember who Christian York is, he was the winner of the Gut Check Challenge that year. Gut Check was TNA's copy to Tough Enough. Christian York is very new to the company, and I don't know if he wrestled before this time. While he was in the ring, he wasn't bad. Like, he wasn't tripping over his own feet, but you can tell that he just had to look, double take everything, make sure he was in the right spot, and maybe that caused the match to be a little bit slower than what it was supposed to be. But again, this match did have good to decent guys. It didn't have anything great in there to make that match go into the next level. As an X Division match, it is a okay match. Nothing terrible happens. That big botch in the beginning of the match is the only botch of note. I would give this match a 3 out of 5. Nothing memorable, nothing insane, just a mediocre match to open up the show. Moving on from the first match, we go on to a backstage section with JB. Everybody's favorite JB, very iconic, very memorable TNA guy. And in this interview, he is talking to Joseph Park, one of the best characters that TNA has done. And Joseph Park doesn't say anything of note, he just talks about his match that's coming up. But the best part of this backstage interview, Bad Influence comes in, they kick Joseph Park out, and then Christopher Daniels cuts a very intense and very strong promo. I was never a big fan of Christopher Daniels, but rewatching the show, and especially this promo, made me realize how good he is. This promo is a top-notch promo. It's intense, it's believable. Now let's go into the second match of the night. It is Joey Ryan versus Joseph Park. We all know the things that happened with Joey Ryan and the things that came out about him and all the allegations and all the drama that he had. I'm not gonna talk about them because I don't really care or wish to talk about that. It's not a really fun topic to discuss. So let's move on to the match itself. Joseph Park is a good wrestler. I think we all know that Joseph Park is a bisque. Spoiler alerts if you didn't know that. And Joey Ryan is decent, but I guess they just didn't click. Joseph Park was a comedy character, so he acted like he didn't know how to wrestle. So there were a lot of punch, kick, pausing. It was a very start and stop match. They would do one or two moves, and then somebody would go to the corner, take a break, or look at the crowd. Nothing really memorable. I do have to say that Taz on commentary really hates Joseph Park for some reason. I know it's all about his character, and Taz was the heel at this time because he was also a member of the Aces and Eights. This match does start with a promo between these two guys. The promo itself wasn't really anything to note. Nothing was said, nothing interesting. Joey jumped Joseph to start the match, and then it goes into that start and stop section where the match itself in the ring is very forgettable. Park picks up the win, and that's the end. It was a very short match, thank God. It didn't go on for too long, so we didn't have to suffer for that long. I would have to give it a 2 out of 5, unfortunately, even though Joseph Park is a great wrestler. This match just did not click. Moving on from Joseph Park and Joey Ryan, we go again backstage. That's one aspect of this show that I gotta bring up. We will be going backstage after every other match. Backstage is a big part of this show. We're gonna keep having JB show up. We're gonna keep having backstage vignettes. This backstage section was nothing of note. It was Brooke Hogan talking to Bully Ray, aka her husband in storyline at this time. And then Hulk Hogan, rest in peace Hulkster, comes in, talks to Bully. Nothing of note, nothing interesting. All I have to say is Bully called Hulk Hogan dad, which was pretty funny. But let's go into the third match of the night, which is the Knockouts Championship match with Gail Kim versus Velvet Sky.
Juicy.
I have talked about other shows from this era of wrestling. I've talked about Survivor Series, I've talked about Money in the Bank in WWE, and I've always said how the wrestling in the Divas division was never up to par, or it was very botchy and very boring. TNA Knockouts division was always superior to the Divas division in WWE, and I think that's mostly because of Gail Kim. Now, Gail Kim is one of the best female wrestlers out there, and this match, it did have Velvet, and we all know that Velvet Sky is not a Picasso in the ring. She didn't mess up that much. So let's get into this match. Tara and Terrell is the special guest referee, and Tara and Gail Kim are having beef. Right as the match started, you can see that Gail was getting into Tara's face, talking shit and pushing her around. This is an aspect that we're going to be following the whole match. In the beginning, they do a lot of roll-ups, Velvet trying to get the quick pin. Then they start doing some wrestling moves. Velvet has a beautiful move to the outside. They do some other good moves in the ring. At some point, Gail Kim is held up on the top rope corner, and then Velvet Sky smashes her face first into the ring. The wrestling was decent at this match, pleasantly surprised. It was a good length match, but nothing too crazy. Towards the end of the match, we have a weird situation. Velvet Sky grabs Gail Kim, and then Gail Kim grabs onto the ref, and as she is holding onto the ref, she manages to get her finisher off on Velvet Sky. She goes for the pin, but Velvet Sky kicks out in 2. Then Gail Kim loses it. She gets in the face of Tara, pushes her, yells, and then slaps her. And then tells her, fine, disqualify me, I don't care. Tara does not disqualify her. She attacks Gail Kim, knocks her to the floor, beats her head against the mat, and then Velvet Sky capitalizes and wins. And Velvet Sky keeps the Knockouts title. While the match itself was decent and a good time, the one aspect I didn't like about this match was the story they were trying to tell. They were focusing too much on what Gail had with the ref, and it made the champion and the championship feel less. The champion wasn't the main aspect of this match. It was Gail Kim versus Tara Terrell, and Velvet Sky was there just to be there. So I didn't like that aspect. They didn't put enough emphasis on the championship and on the champion themselves. I do want to bring up, there was a guy that was holding up a sign with Velvet Sky's picture, and at the bottom it was saying goddess, so I guess simps existed back then too. This match was a 3 out of 5, a good time for what it was. Now, focusing on the story between Tara and Gail Kim, they will continue to feud, and then at some point they will have a couple of matches. One of the matches they have, there's a memorable spot where both women do an outside move from the ramp right onto the concrete floor. So the feud between Tara and Gail Kim will go on after this show. So we have that to look forward to. We move on to another backstage interview with JB and Robbie E. A lot of people don't like Robbie E. Now, and I can understand why people don't like Robbie E. His gimmick is annoying and obnoxious, but rewatching this show, Robbie E kind of grew on me. I found him more and more entertaining as I watched this show, and in this backstage interview, he is just going over his match that he will have against Robbie T. If you guys don't know the backstory of this match, Robbie T came into the company, and then Robbie E took him on as his personal bodyguard. Robbie E and Robbie T were supposed to be best friends, but we all know how this ends up in wrestling. Robbie E got an ego, and Robbie T did not like that, so it caused the group to split. So now we have a match between them. It is former friends fighting for absolutely nothing. This match has nothing on the line, no title, no special gimmick, no stipulation, which is weird for TNA because they love their stipulations and their gimmicks. So let's get into this match. This match was more comedy than wrestling. So when the match first starts off, Robbie E is scared of Robbie T. He hides behind an announcer. He tries to do everything to stay away from Robbie T. He runs to the corner, he runs between the ropes, just trying to keep distance away from him and Robbie T. When the match starts kicking off, Robbie E goes for the leg to cut down the big man, but it doesn't really do anything. This whole match was Robbie E trying to do everything he can, but his offense wasn't doing anything, and Robbie T always had the upper hand when they got into wrestling. While this match was supposed to be a comedy match, nobody in the crowd really liked it or was into it. The crowd was dead silent for this match. The quietest they would be all night. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted to watch this match, and they all wanted it to end already. Robbie T picks up the win, and Robbie E loses absolutely nothing. A very forgettable match. I would have to give it a 2 out of 5. After that, we go backstage again to another interview with JB and everybody's favorite wrestler, Austin Aries. I really wonder what happened to Austin Aries because he was so big with TNA, but he's not in TNA anymore. I really wonder what happened to him. Anyways, so the backstage interview with Austin Aries is nothing special. They are just talking about their upcoming tag team title defense. He is in a team with Bobby Roode, and Austin Aries, the whole story about them as a team was where is Bobby Roode, and Bobby Roode shows up out of nowhere, so now they are a unified front. Match number 5. It is a tag team championship 3-way with Hernandez and Chavo Guerrero. Now the other Guerrero, Chavo Guerrero. Nobody's favorite Guerrero. Then we have Bad Influence of Kazarian and Daniels, and then the champions themselves, Austin Aries and Bobby Roode. One thing I do have to say, if you never watched TNA and you only watched WWE, you would never realize how goated Bobby Roode really was. Because when he came into WWE, it was towards the end of his career, and he's best known for that catchy theme song that they gave him. Bobby Roode didn't really do anything in his time as a wrestler in the WWE, and it's quite sad to see that because Bobby Roode was one of the best wrestlers that TNA had, and if he had gone to the WWE a bit earlier, he could have been a multiple-time champion. But that did not happen, unfortunately. So let's get into this match. This match was surprisingly decent, nothing too crazy. All these guys in the ring are very good in the ring, and they are all reliable hands. One thing I do want to bring up is that the crowd was really behind Hernandez and Chavo. They really love these guys. The match, unfortunately, didn't have any big or memorable moments. One thing, Hernandez came out of nowhere and jumped through the rope from the ramp into the ring and knocked some people down. That was pretty cool. A lot of tag-ins, a lot of tag-outs being a 3-way tag team match. And towards the end, it got a little out of hand. It was a little hard to follow who was legal and who was not. not, but Bobby Roode and Austin Aries win, and they keep their tag team championships. I would have to give this match a 3 out of 5. Decent work in the ring, but nothing memorable or nothing to write home about, but still a solid, good showing from all these guys. Now we go into the section of the show that has to do with the Aces and Eights storyline, and it is another backstage interview with JB, and this time he is talking to the one and only Kurt Angle. Do you guys view Kurt Angle as a WWE guy or a TNA guy? Because in my opinion, he has done a lot more memorable stuff and some of his best work in TNA. While in WWE, when he first arrived, he had banger after banger, especially that storyline where he was with Steve Austin. That was one of the best things he has done. If you really looked at it, Kurt Angle spent a lot of years in TNA and he did some of his most intense work in TNA. So it's hard to think about Kurt Angle as a WWE guy or a TNA guy because his history is so intertwined between both of these companies. And now that WWE might be buying up TNA, they might be able to expose what Kurt Angle did in TNA to a much more wider audience. It's an interesting thing to ponder. Do you consider him a TNA guy or a WWE guy? Let's get into the backstory of this match. He is fighting West Briscoe, another nobody from TNA at that time, in a steel cage match. So let me tell you what the story was and how this match happened. So at this time, the Aces and Eights storyline was going strong, and Kurt Angle was beefing with them as everybody else because it was a company-wide storyline. And Kurt Angle believed that the Aces and Eights had a man in the inside of TNA, so he didn't know who to trust. So he brought in 2 new rookies into the company to teach them and to show them the ways of wrestling. Those 2 rookies being West Briscoe and Garrett Bischoff, Eric Bischoff's son. So in storyline, these 2 guys come in, they earn a spot in the roster, and they are basically the students of Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle is showing them the way and how to wrestle and all that, blah, 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 blah. And at some point, Kurt Angle has a steel cage match against Mr. Anderson, a member of the Aces and Eights. And I will go into Mr. Anderson and how he joined the group later on down the show. So during the steel cage match, a masked member of the Aces and Eights climbs the cage and jumps in. West Briscoe, being outside of the cage, goes in to help out Kurt Angle, or so we all believe. The member of the Aces and Eights takes off his mask and reveals that he is Garrett Bischoff, and Kurt Angle is shocked. He is flabbergasted. He goes to attack Garrett, but then out of nowhere, West attacks him from the back on the knee. So it's revealed that both of Kurt Angle's students betrayed him and are members of the Aces and Eights. Now, they did explain why these 2 guys joined the Aces and Eights later on. They basically said that they were angry with Kurt Angle and they didn't want to take orders from him anymore and blah, 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 blah. You know, the usual stuff. It could have been good, but the problem was that both of these guys were not over with the crowd. Nobody cared about them. And you would assume that them turning heel on Kurt Angle would get them some heat, but no, they were always the least important or least interesting members of the Aces and Eights during the group's lifetime. So let's get into the match itself. So right now it is West Briscoe and Kurt Angle in a steel cage. The match itself was decent, and it was decent only because Kurt Angle was in there. And we know how good Kurt Angle is, and he can get a good match out of everybody. But saying that, he is not a miracle worker, and West was not on the level of Kurt Angle. While Kurt Angle was trying to do everything to make this match entertaining and fun, West was kind of there like a dead fish. He really brought down the match, and it's nothing against him. He was very new as a wrestler, so you can't expect him to be on the same level as Kurt Angle. It was management's fault putting him out there with Kurt Angle. Of course, he's gonna look terrible compared to Angle. He is the wrestling machine. So a few memorable moments. In the beginning of the match, West punches Kurt in the dick. It is a steel cage match, so no disqualifications. He tries to wrestle him, but Kurt Angle gets the upper hand, and then he does his slams. Everybody loves the Kurt Angle slams. And then towards the end of the match, Kurt Angle unfortunately takes out the ref. He puts West Briscoe in the ankle lock, and West Briscoe is tapping out, but the ref is taken out, so there's nobody to ring the bell. Kurt Angle, being pissed, flips West the double finger, and he steps out of the cage to win that way. But the ref doesn't see him because he's still knocked out. Then from the back, D'Lo comes out, attacks Kurt, throws him back into the cage, and then pulls West out, closes the door behind him. The ref magically comes back, sees West outside of the ring, and rings the bell. So West beat Kurt Angle on pay-per-view. It was a dirty finish, which protected Angle, but it didn't make any sense. West West had no reason being in there with Kurt Angle. He wasn't ready. He was way over his head, and the match really floundered for that. And the ending itself didn't leave anything of note. Yeah, it had a dirty finish, so we could assume that Kurt Angle was gonna get his revenge. But did we honestly want to see Kurt Angle going after West Briscoe again? No, it's West Briscoe. Nobody really wanted to see him at that time on TV. So I'll have to give this match a 3 out of 5 for that. Slow, kind of boring match. Kurt Angle did do his best to make it fun. A shitty, dirty ending. It just brings down the match, unfortunately, from a 4 out of 5 to a 3 out of 5. Now we are getting to the juicy parts of the show. We are getting into the lethal lockdown match between Team TNA and the Aces and Nates. So a quick breakdown of the rules of the lethal lockdown match. Each team has 5 members, so there's 10 people in total. 2 people start off the match, and every 2 minutes, a new member from the opposite team comes in. Now, the man advantage of this match was decided on last week's Impact tapings, and Aces and Eights got the man advantage by beating Sting and James Storm. Now, let me tell you what this story is. So, Aces and Eights, the biggest storyline in TNA history. It has been going on for a year, I want to say. When it first started, these masked men came out and attacked Sting. He was talking about his Hall of Fame, and then they came out and attacked him. And then they started causing trouble for Hulk Hogan, the general manager. They started attacking anybody who was a TNA wrestler, and they kept going after Sting. So Sting is the main guy going after the Aces and Eights because it all started with him. So what is Aces and Eights? Aces and Eights is this biker group that came out of nowhere that had issues and beef with certain people in TNA. And the fun part about this storyline, they explained why every member of the group joined the Aces and Eights. Now, it was very similar. They all had some problems with either Hulk Hogan, Sting, or the company in general. So all these guys just had some unknown beef with everybody in TNA, and they decided to come in as a group and fuck everything up. So in the beginning of this storyline, they were all wearing masks and nobody knew who they were. The first thing that had to be done was taking these masks off. It was who were these guys and we need to unmask them. As the storyline went on and on every month, we got a new reveal of a member of the Aces and Eights, and then the reason was explained of why they joined the group, which was pretty much the same thing for everybody. They had some beef with TNA or management. The only person that was not like that was Mr. Anderson. Anderson has to be the most interesting guy in this group. He joined the team out of nowhere. They just kinda wanted him to join and they bribed him with women, so he joined. He didn't have any beef, he didn't have any anger with anybody, he just wanted to join them and he joined them because he liked them. So Mr. Anderson was the first person that we saw on TV that was recruited by the group. He was not a founding member of the group, he was recruited by them after the group formed. Now that we know why the Aces and Eights are here and why they were formed, let me talk to you about Team TNA and why this team exists. Basically, they all have the same reason except of 2 people. Eric Young, Magnus, Samoa Joe, all these people were all getting beaten up and attacked by the Aces and Eights, so it makes sense why they want to fight the Aces and Eights. They kept getting jumped by them, so they have beef with the Aces and Eights. Sting is the leader of Team TNA, and he was the first person that the Aces and Eights decided to jump. So that is where his beef with the Aces and Eights starts. Now, Sting was more involved in this storyline than anybody else. He would even team up with Bully Ray, who we'll be talking about later on the main event, and they had a match between the Aces and Eights, which did not end well. Sting was always the soldier of TNA in the storyline, and he was the guy that always went after the Aces and Eights and wanted to take them out. Another member of the team that I want to bring up is James Storm. Now, James Storm is interesting because he is the only member of Team TNA that has a different reason to want to beat up the Aces and Eights or has beef with the Aces and Eights. So in the beginning, when the Aces and Eights first debuted and they were going through the mask phase, everybody kept asking who their leader is and why are they here. The Aces and Eights started bluffing. They kept saying that a storm was coming, so they were basically saying without saying that their leader is James Storm, and they even played it off on TV. Anytime the group would jump somebody in the middle of the ring and people would come out, they would fight them. But if James Storm showed up, they would immediately leave and not attack him. Anytime they ran into a James Storm match, they would attack his opponents, but not James Storm himself. So the Aces and Eights were trying to make everybody believe that James Storm was the leader of the group. Now, we know that didn't happen. The Aces and Eights attacked James Storm, so they put an ending to that lie. It could have been interesting if James Storm was the leader of the Aces and Eights at the end of the day. They could have explained it. I don't know how though, but it could have been interesting. So basically, everybody in this match has beef with everybody because they all keep jumping each other and they want to put an end to this. So let's get into the match itself. It starts off with Mr. Anderson and Magnus. At this time, Magnus did not have that awful title reign that killed the company. He was still very new and he was still a babyface, so he got a positive reaction from the crowd. Mr. Anderson and Magnus are very good in the ring and they both have a solid match. As the second member of the Aces and Eight comes in, Mike Knox. Mike Knox, nothing really to note. He never really stuck out or did anything important or memorable. After Mike Knox comes out, Samoa Joe, another top TNA guy that would be out of the company in a few years, comes out and he levels out the playing field. So during this match, at some points, Team TNA has the upper hand and other times Aces and Eights has the upper hand. So they always do a flip-flop. No team has dominance for too long in this match, which I think is a good choice because he keeps both teams on the same level and it keeps the match competitive. After Samoa Joe, Garrett Bischoff comes out. Nobody really cares about Garrett Bischoff. He doesn't do anything of note. And then for Team TNA, Eric Young comes out. Eric Young is another one of those TNA top guys. He would leave the company, but he would come back and he is currently still with the company. He had a run in the WWE, but it didn't lead anywhere and the WWE didn't do anything with him. Unfortunately, he is, as of now, the biggest star that they have. And then Devon comes out. So again, the match is flip-flopping. Team TNA has the upper hand and Team Aces and Eights gets the upper hand. Nothing too crazy. I do want to bring up that Samoa Joe does a nasty slap. You could hear that across state lines. Ooh. And then after Devon comes out, James Storm comes out for Team TNA. The one guy that has the most beef with Aces and Eights because they were trying to lie to everybody and make them believe that he was the leader of the group. James Storm is another one of those great TNA wrestlers that didn't have much of a WWE career. James Storm sticked with TNA longer than everybody else, but then when he came to WWE, he was out of the company in no time. He basically did not even do anything with the company, and he was back to being independent or going back to TNA after that. And then the last member of Aces and Eights comes out, Doc, the big boy. Every member of Team Aces and Eights is in the ring, and then the final member of Team TNA comes out, Sting, and Sting is over with the crowd. Sting comes out and he has weapons on both hands. He goes into the ring and he starts beating everybody with the bat, and that causes Team TNA to get the upper hand. The longest time that Team TNA keeps the upper hand in this match, everybody grabs a weapon and they just go ham on the Aces and Eights. Everybody takes their frustrations out on the Aces and Eights, and some memorable moments happen. Devon gets hit in the nuts with a weapon. Stinger splash on trash can. At this time, Taz is losing his mind on commentary, freaking out and talking about how the Aces and Eights need to flip this. Mr. Anderson is the member of the Aces and Eights that gets his hand on a weapon, gets the upper hand, and they start beating up Team TNA with a bunch of weapons, but it doesn't last that long. They do a beautiful superplex on the corner with almost everybody involved in it. Joe does a submission on Mr. Anderson, but nothing comes out of it. And now towards the end of the match, EY goes to the top rope. Sting tells him no, go all the way up on the steel cage, and then EY does, and he does a elbow from the top of the cage on Mike Knox, and then they get the 1, 2, 3. Team TNA beats the Aces and Eights, and the crowd goes wild. And this match was great. This match was everything you wanted it to be. It had memorable spots, it had craziness, it was fast-paced, and it was fun to watch. This match is a 5 out of 5, and it is not the end of the Aces and Eights, because you might think, okay, Team TNA finally beat the Aces and Eights, it's over. But this victory is short-lived, because if you know what happens in the main event, the Aces and Eights come back and get the upper hand over TNA once again. So it was a smart thing to have the Aces and Eights lose, because you give the fans what they want. The good guys win, the bad guys lose, and everybody assumes, okay, Aces and Eights have lost, it's over, we don't have to deal with them anymore. But no, at the main event, the Aces and Eights come back and they pull off the heist of the century, which I'm gonna talk about when we get into the main event. But this was a very smart way to have this match play out because you have the Aces and Eights losing, they make the babyface look good, but the heels come back and they get the last laugh. It is great storytelling. So let's get into the main event itself. It is for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, and it is Jeff Hardy, the champion, versus Bully Ray. So let me go over the backstory of how we ended up with Bully Ray in the main event. As the Aces and Eights storyline was kicking off, another storyline was happening with Bully Ray, Hulk Hogan, and Brooke Hogan. Bully Ray started dating Brooke Hogan behind Hulk Hogan's back, and then Austin Aries saw them. Well, we all saw them because it was on TV, and then Austin Aries exposed them to Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan clearly was not happy about his daughter dating a wrestler and was not happy with this relationship, but Bully Ray did the unthinkable. He got on one knee and he proposed to Brooke Hogan right in the middle of the ring. So you know what that means? We're having a wrestling wedding. I love wrestling weddings. Only good things happen in wrestling weddings. And a good thing did happen in this wrestling wedding. This wedding between Brooke Hogan and Bully Ray has one of the most memorable moments in Aces and Eights history. Taz revealed he was a member of the Aces and Eights. Having Taz as a member of the Aces and Eights was a good idea because he could always be on commentary hyping up the heels and making them sound more dangerous. So what happens after that? The Aces and Eights come out during the wedding and they beat everybody up, and there's this spot where they hit Bully Ray in the head with a concrete pillar. Memorable spot, and the moment ended with a destroyed wedding, so it's always good to see people's special day get ruined. After that, Bully Ray teamed up with Sting to take on the Aces and Eights. Nothing happened, they kept losing, but then Bully Ray became more and more liked by Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan, as the general manager, made Bully Ray the #1 contender. And during the build-up of this match, they were really going behind the history that these guys have and basically saying one more match between Bully Ray and Jeff Hardy, which I guess makes sense, but if you really think about it, these guys were tag team wrestlers. They don't have any history with just the two of them between each other. They were always a part of a tag team. Kind of felt weird that they were hyping up their history while two members of the tag team weren't involved in this storyline. But you know, details. TNA doesn't care about details. Let's get into this match. Jeff Hardy is, of course, one of the best wrestlers in TNA, and he does his top rope moves of death. Bully Ray eats shit in one corner. West and Garrett Bischoff run in. They are the first Aces and Eights members to run into this match. Bully and Jeff Hardy are fighting together and they are taken out. Bully does his chops. Everybody loves Bully Ray's chops. You can hear them across state lines. And then the match turns from brawling to trying to escape. Jeff Hardy keeps trying to escape, but he's always stopped. They do a top rope power bomb. Jeff kicks out. Hulk Hogan and his daughter come out to cheer up Bully Ray and then out of nowhere, the Aces and Eights come out, surround the cage, and start climbing. Bully Ray and Jeff Hardy are in the middle of the ring, back to back, getting ready to fight off the Aces and Eights. Devon is looking at Bully. Bully is looking at Devon, and then Devon tosses Bully Ray a hammer. Bully Ray turns around, points the hammer at Hulk Hogan, and attacks Jeff Hardy at the back with the hammer. Pins Jeff Hardy. 1, 2, 3. Bully Ray just won the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, and the crowd is shocked. Nobody was making any sounds. Nobody knew what sounds to make because they were confused. Nobody knew what was happening. The storyline was building up to Bully Ray being an enemy of the Aces and Eights, but then out of nowhere, he joined them. And not only that, but he revealed that he is the president and the leader of the Aces and Eights. So it was a swerve just for a swerve. It was prime Vince Russo booking, a swerve just for a swerve, just to get the crowd shocked. It did work though. They did get a lot of heat and the crowd was throwing trash. Brooke Hogan and Hulk Hogan were losing their minds. Bully Ray cuts this heel promo on them saying that he used Hulk Hogan and that he screwed Brooke Hogan to get what he wanted. And looking back at it, you know what they say, hindsight is always 20/20. It doesn't really make any sense of why Bully Ray joined He kept fighting them for months and he would get his ass beat by the Aces and Eights for months leading up to this point. But they did do a very good thing after this event. They had Bully Ray shoot some vignettes where he explained everything that happened and why it happened. He went over each attack, each match, and everything that happened and why he did it. So everything happened so he would make himself look like the babyface that hates the Aces and Eights while secretly leading them. And then at the end, he would get the shot at the world title, win the world title, and reveal to everybody that he is the leader of the Aces and Eights. The ending was confusing. The swerve was a swerve just to be a swerve. It was confusing, but it finally took the Aces and Eights storyline the next level. We were always wondering who the leader is and what they want. Well, now we know. We know who it is and what they wanted, and they got what they wanted. At this point, I would say this was the peak of the Aces and Eights storyline, because after this, while it did have a few good months where the storyline kept continuing, towards the end, as every wrestling storyline, this storyline just got bad. It got boring. It got nonsensical. They had to end it, and they just refused. Just kept pushing the Aces and Eights storyline. They kept losing more and more members. At some point, they brought in some UFC guy that I never heard of. They brought in
The Hot Brook.
and the storyline just got too out of hand. It got too out of hand and nobody knew what was happening. It would end too late, and I will go over the ending of the Aces and Eights in a later day. But as of now, from this point to the past, this storyline has been great. It was a great storyline. It was very memorable. One thing I do want to add, at the end of the match when Bully Ray is cheering, he trips in the corner of the rope and the crowd laughs at him. So that's always good. So the show ends with the Aces and Eights coming back and getting one over everybody in the company. And not only that, they also hold the World Heavyweight Championship. So how is TNA supposed to survive? This match was a 5 out of 5. Very good. Jeff Hardy was great as always. Bully Ray was great as always. The swerve was a swerve just to be a swerve, but it was a fun swerve, and he kept continuing this story, and he took it to the next level that it needed to be. So overall, this show was great. Nothing to complain about. The worst match had to be that Joey Ryan and Joseph Park match, but what you gonna do? So let me talk to you about what happened after this show. So as I said, the Aces and Eights storyline kept going on for way too long for its own good, and then it just became stupid and annoying, and they had to kill it, and they killed it. Mr. Anderson betrayed the group. Everybody left from the group. They were either fired, left the company. After this, Bully Ray didn't do anything of note after the Aces and Eights. It was like TNA put everything in this storyline that when it ended, they had no idea what they wanted to do. And following this storyline, the biggest story that they had after the Aces and Eights was the Magnus title reign. Now, I have talked before slightly about this title reign, but now I would like to go over it with a little bit more detail. So the Magnus title reign started when Jeff Hardy was fighting Magnus for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship in a Dixieland match. It was a cage match that you had to escape and then climb a ladder on top of the entrance to grab the title. It was whatever it was. The gimmick was okay, I guess. It's TNA. What you gonna do? But the match itself ended in shenanigans because Jeff Hardy was screwed. Rockstar Spud pushed the ladder off, and then they let Magnus climb the ladder, and he gained the title. So he turned heel the night he won the title. And the problem with this title reign was that they really screwed up Magnus and everybody else. Magnus at this time was seen as a paper champion because he would always rely on other people to win his matches. He would never have a clean victory or a normal one-on-one match. He always relied on other people. He always had to hide behind others, and it just made him look weak. And this storyline was the beginning of the end for TNA. TNA lost AJ Styles, Sting, Samoa Joe. They lost any notable name that they had on that roster. Not only that, they lost their TV deal with Spike TV, and they were moved over to Destination America. After they lost the Spike TV deal, they moved into New York in a very small arena. They brought back the Six Sides, but it wasn't the same. TNA after that was never the same. They lost so many people. They lost so many big names. They lost everything. This storyline was like the beginning of the end for TNA. It was Aces and Eights, the Magnus storyline. MVP came in and he tried to take over the company. TNA always have to have a take over the company storyline, and then everything just went to shit. I could talk about everything that happened, but why? It is just just depressing. TNA went from being like a suitable second place company to the laughing stock of the wrestling world. TNA hasn't really recovered from that time. I am just kind of ranting just to rant now. As always, thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys on the next one.